The alien bride was rejected for being too human until the soldier said, "Then just be mine." The transport vessel cut through the dusk above Epsilon Verge, its thrusters trailing silver fire across a violet sky. Below, the colony's surface shimmered a frontier of metal plains and wind-carved dunes, half claimed by man, half stolen from the void. The docks of Port Meridian waited like ribs of a sleeping beast, lights pulsing faintly in the haze. When the ship's belly opened, the air smelled of ion dust and salt. A line of women stepped down the ramp, one by one, draped in diplomatic silks from a dozen species. They had come as unity brides, tokens of peace in a galaxy still learning how to love what it feared. Last among them descended Arian Solara. She moved slower than the others, her bare feet silent on the metal steps. Under the dim blue of the docking bay, her skin shimmered, faintly pale, smooth, threaded with fine veins of silver light that pulsed softly beneath her collarbones. Not bright, just alive. In her hands she carried a small containment sphere, a relic from her homeworld, glowing with faint liquid starlight, her only belonging. The air grew still as the officials turned toward her. Virin hybrid, identification. Arian Solara, age 32 planetary cycles. The dock registrar read aloud. His voice carried a note of distaste that didn't need translation. A human matron in a military coat stepped forward, Lady Quinlan Voss, representative of the Terran Unity Council. She looked Arian up and down, her gloved fingers tightening around a datapad. "You were listed as youth class," Quinlan said flatly. "You don't appear youthful. Your biological markers are past optimum replication age. The Council requires vitality in its unification partners." Arian's voice was quiet, melodic, touched with the strange rhythm of her alien tongue. "It was written in the registry. My age is no secret." "Too old," Quinlan repeated. "And your features they've humanized too much during hybrid growth. You've lost the Varan purity we paid for." The words hit with the cold precision of a blade. Around them, other brides whispered behind veiled lips. A few guards exchanged smirks. Arian lifted her chin, slow, deliberate. Her voice barely rose above the hum of the engines. Peace was the purpose, not perfection. "Peace," Quinlan snapped, "is built on standards, not sentiment. You will not be accepted." There was no argument to win. The decision was final before she'd even stepped off the ship. The docking official stamped her clearance file, voided. The digital seal glowed red against her name. Then they turned away. The other brides were ushered towards shuttles to their new lives, their new masters. Arian stood motionless, the hum of the departing craft washing over her like a tide of heat. Dust swirled around her gown. For a moment, her faint bioluminescence dimmed like a heartbeat faltering. No one spoke to her. No one even looked back. Then a voice broke through the wind, deep, coarse, and very human. "You got somewhere to go?" Arian turned. He stood near the freight bay doors, helmet under one arm, coat scorched at the edges, skin tanned by radiation storms. Commander Ryan Vale, ex-soldier of the Jupiter Gate Wars, one of those men the frontier forgot, but the stars remembered. His eyes were calm, unblinking, carved with quiet endurance. Arian straightened, instinctively guarded. "If this is mockery, human, I am not in the mood." Ryan shook his head once. "Not mockery, just asking." He stepped closer, boots echoing on steel. "Saw how they looked at you. Like you were defective cargo." She looked past him toward the horizon where the glass towers of Port Meridian glowed against the dying sun. "That is what I am now, apparently." "Then they're fools," he said simply. "I've seen things worth less than you given medals." Arian's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes, a flicker of confusion, broke through the calm. "You speak strangely for a soldier." He half smiled. "Retired one. My outpost west of here. Barely standing, but it's quiet. Safer than these politics." Her voice cooled again. "You're offering me shelter?" He shook his head. "No, rest." The word hung in the charged air between them, heavier than it should have been. "I am not a stray," she said. And I'm not a savior. Silence. The low thrum of a departing shuttle filled the gap. Then quietly she asked, "Why help me?" He met her gaze steady, unreadable. "Because you looked like you still had a soul left to save. That's rare out here." The wind shifted. Somewhere a beacon blinked crimson on the far edge of the platform. Ariel's containment sphere glowed softly in her hands. Finally, she nodded once. "Very well, but I pay my way." "Then you'll fit right in," Rian said, turning toward a weathered transport skimmer waiting near the perimeter fence. She followed. The security lights cast long shadows across the steel ground, hers thin and trembling. His broad and slow. As they moved, the dock faded behind them, swallowed by twilight and dust. The skimmer roared into the open desert. They traveled in silence, the horizon stretching endlessly beneath a bruised purple sky. Ion storms flashed faintly in the distance, lightning that burned green, like veins of the planet itself. Arian sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, her silver veins pulsing faintly with each breath. "You live far from the colony center," she murmured. "Far enough to forget it exists." She studied him, the scars across his knuckles, the calloused hands, the faint tremor in his right wrist, signs of an old neural injury. "You fought in the Gate Wars." "Yeah," he didn't elaborate. "I read about them," she said softly. "They called it humanity's first victory beyond the belt." Ryan's lips tightened. "Victory is just another word for who buried fewer bodies." The skimmer hit a ridge. Both of them jolted. He steadied the controls with one hand, then caught her containment sphere as it rolled toward the edge. He handed it back wordlessly. She blinked, surprised. "You knew it wasn't a weapon. Didn't flinch when you dropped it. Figured it meant something." She stared down at the glowing liquid inside. "It's the light of Viren seas. It fades if kept too far from life. I wanted to see if this world could keep it alive." "And?" She looked out the window. The desert stretched like endless bone. "I'll know by dawn." Hours passed. The sky deepened from violet to black. Stars emerged sharp and white against the void. The skimmer's engine hummed low. At last, lights appeared ahead, faint, scattered. The outpost. Ryan slowed the vehicle. The compound was small, 3 metal domes, one flickering beacon, and a half-buried watchtower braced by rusting struts. It looked abandoned. Arian stepped out first. The air was thin, tinged with ozone. She tilted her head, listening. The silence here had a pulse like the planet itself was waiting. "This is home?" she asked quietly. "For now," Rian said, powering down the engine. "Outpost 12 used to house 30 soldiers. Now just me." She glanced at the cracked solar panels, the collapsed antenna, the faint scorch marks across the landing pad. "You live among ghosts," he shrugged. "Better company than most living men I've met." Inside, the corridors were dim and narrow, walls lined with broken comm panels. She trailed her fingers along one, and faint blue light flickered to life beneath her touch. Ryan noticed. "You can repair old circuitry?" "Varian biotech is adaptive. It likes broken things." He smiled slightly at that, the kind of smile that appeared only once every few years on a man like him. "Then you'll like this place." She followed him into the command room. The ceiling leaked faint drops of condensation. He set down his helmet, pulled a thermal jacket from a hook, and offered it to her. She didn't take it immediately. "You think I'm fragile?" "No," he said simply. "Just cold." After a long pause, she accepted it. The fabric smelled faintly of smoke and engine oil. It was heavy on her shoulders, but warm. As he moved to the power console, she looked around the faint hum of dormant machines, the dust-covered table, the wall of old star maps fading from years of neglect. "You live in ruin," she said. Rian didn't look back. That's what peace leaves behind. Outside, the wind howled through the metal skeleton of the tower. Arian stood by the window, watching lightning ripple across the dunes. Her reflection glowed faintly in the glass, half human, half something the stars dreamed up. For the first time since the rejection, her containment sphere glowed brighter. The light inside no longer flickered weakly. It pulsed steady, strong as if the planet itself was answering back. Behind her, Ryan's voice broke the silence. Tomorrow, I'll show you the perimeter. Storm barriers failing. If you're staying a while, you'll need to know where it's safe. He didn't turn. And if I choose to leave? Then I'll point you the right way, he said. No one deserves to be thrown away. The words caught her off guard, too human, too simple. She looked at him, studying the man who had offered her nothing but honesty. You're a strange species, Commander Vale, she said softly. He shrugged. Yeah, that's what keeps us alive. Lightning flashed again, illuminating them both in white fire. Two silhouettes in a world too large for either of them. And under that alien sky, where rejection had begun, something fragile and unnamed began to stir. Not trust, not love, just a spark of belonging neither had expected to find. The storm howled on, but inside the forgotten outpost, the light refused to die. Dawn came slowly to Epsilon Verge. The first light wasn't gold, but blue refracted through clouds thick with metallic dust. It filtered across the desert like the glow of a sleeping furnace, painting the dunes in strange, shifting hues. Inside Outpost 12, everything hummed faintly. Machines half dead, solar panels stuttering awake, a weak breeze rattling the comm tower's bones. Arian Solara stood by the window in the mess hall, wrapped in Ryan's heavy jacket. It dwarfed her, the sleeves rolled twice, the shoulders broad. Her containment sphere rested on the table beside a steaming cup of nutrient brew. The light from it danced faintly across her cheekbones, outlining the thin silver lines beneath her skin. Behind her, Ryan moved quietly, repairing a broken console near the door. His movements were slow, deliberate, the rhythm of a man who'd been alone too long to waste words. You wake early, she said, not looking back. He grunted. Habit, hard to break. War habit? Loneliness habit. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I've known that one too. He didn't answer. He just kept working, sparks flashing off his multi-tool. The outpost was a skeleton of what it once was, 3 dome structures connected by buried tunnels. Most systems were offline. The main reactor flickered every few minutes. But in the faint rhythm of machinery and silence, a fragile routine began to form. By the 3rd day, Arian had memorized the sound of each generator pulse, the way the wind sang through the cracked east vent, the echo of Ryan's boots in the hall. She didn't ask for thanks, and he didn't offer explanations. When she saw him limp while lifting a supply crate, she said nothing, just walked over, lifted the other side, and carried it with him. He didn't stop her. That night, she repaired the water recycler with bioluminescent filaments drawn from her own veins. When Ryan saw the reactor hum stronger than it had in months, he paused by the console, staring at the glow in her hands. That's your blood? Not quite, she said. My species developed light as part of its immune response. What glows, heals. Then keep glowing, he muttered. This place could use the help. Her laughter was soft, the first sound of warmth in the cold steel corridors. The desert outside was merciless. Plasma storms drifted like ghost tides, turning the horizon into a shimmering wall of static. The heat by day could melt unshielded tools. The cold by night could crack hull metal. But inside the outpost, small things began to live again. Arian cultivated a patch of glow moss from her home planet in the Hydra Bay. Its faint blue light pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. Ryan started cleaning old drone casings, restoring 2 that could still hover, one he named Patch, the other Rusty. Sometimes when the storms quieted, they'd step outside the barrier dome. He'd show her the distant ruins of Outpost 13, swallowed by the desert years ago. It was my unit's station, Ryan said once, voice hollow. We lost the comm lines in the 3rd month of the war. I was on patrol when the storm hit. When I came back, he stopped. Arian's eyes softened. You were the only one left? He nodded. The council called it acceptable loss. I called it abandonment. You stayed, she said, Someone had to. If I left, their ghosts would have nothing to talk to. There was no pity in her tone when she said, "Then maybe you were meant to be found." He looked at her, truly looked this time, the glow under her skin, the quiet steadiness in her gaze. "You talk like someone who believes the stars care about us." "Not care," she said, turning back toward the dunes, "but notice sometimes." By the end of the first week, they had established an unspoken pattern. Ryan repaired, Arian restored. They worked separately, but always within sight of each other. Every morning he left a tin of heat brew outside her door. Not because he was sentimental, but because he was human, and humans remembered kindness even when they tried to hide it. She noticed. She always noticed. In return, she left small repairs across the outpost, a sealed crack in the dome, a recharged power cell, a repaired drone that hummed quietly through the halls at night. Neither of them spoke about these things, but they didn't need to. It was the language of people who had nothing left to offer but effort, and that was more honest than love. One night the storm hit harder than usual. The wind outside screamed against the shield walls, waves of sand hammering the metal like fists. The lights flickered, then steadied. Arian was in the lower bay when a warning beacon flashed red. The outer vent had ruptured, the shield was failing. Without it, the entire compound would be stripped to bone. She didn't wait for orders. She pulled on a mask, grabbed a repair torch, and ran into the storm. The world outside was chaos, lightning splitting the sky in white veins, dust tearing at her skin, static roaring in her ears. The barrier shimmered unevenly, a broken halo. She reached the vent and anchored herself with a tether. Plasma sparks lit around her, searing through her suit. Her bioluminescence flared in defense, pulsing brighter veins of living light burning through the storm. Inside, Ryan saw her through the control screen. "Arian!" He grabbed his helmet, slammed his hand on the airlock override, and ran. By the time he reached her, the vent was sealed, but she was on her knees, mask cracked, light flickering weakly under her skin. He pulled her close, shielding her from the wind with his body. "Stupid," he growled. "You should have waited." "You would have gone anyway," she whispered. "Maybe, but I don't glow. You do." Her laugh trembled. "Not for long." He tightened his grip. "Stay awake." She blinked slowly, eyes glassy. "If I sleep, will you still be here?" He hesitated, then quietly, "Yeah, I'll be here." When she woke, the storm had passed. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt metal. Ryan sat beside her bunk, arms crossed, a faint bruise on his temple where the debris had hit. "You nearly fried your system," he said without looking at her. "Next time, wait for backup." "I don't wait well," she murmured. "I noticed." Silence. Only the hum of the generators filled the space. Her gaze fell on the object beside her bed, a rough piece of metal carved into a small figure. A bird. "You made this?" she asked. He shrugged. "Wasn't much else to do while you were out. Keeps my hands busy." She turned it in her fingers. "It's imperfect." "Yeah," he said. "So am I." Her eyes softened. "Then perhaps we are alike." Days passed. The desert calmed. The repaired dome gleamed faintly under the alien sun, the glow moss spreading in soft spirals across the hydrobay. The outpost no longer felt like a tomb. It breathed again faintly, but alive. One evening, as they stood on the ridge watching the twin moons rise, Arian asked quietly, "Why did you offer me rest that night?" Ryan didn't answer right away. The moon's light turned the desert silver, his profile sharp against the sky. "Because when I looked at you," he said finally, "I saw someone the galaxy had already decided to throw away. And I know how that feels." She nodded, a faint shimmer in her eyes. "You humans, you fight the void with fire. My kind fades into it. Perhaps that's why we were meant to meet, to see which lasts longer." He smirked. "Guess we'll find out." As the moons climbed higher, the silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was something alive, unspoken, waiting, patient. Somewhere inside the outpost, the old reactor hummed louder than before. The glow moss pulsed, casting soft blue light through the corridors. And for the first time in years, Outpost 12 no longer sounded haunted. It sounded like a heartbeat. Storm season had passed on Epsilon Verge, leaving behind a strange calm. The desert looked glassy now, dunes frozen under a thin crust of reflective dust, the sky a pale, merciless blue. Inside Outpost 12, the hum of repaired machinery had become its own kind of heartbeat. The reactor was steady. The hydro bay glowed softly with Arian's moss. The air felt almost breathable again. And for the first time in years, Ryan Vale found himself whistling while working. He stopped mid-note, realizing what he was doing. The sound startled him, alien, almost wrong. Across the room, Arian Solara looked up from the table where she was aligning holomaps of the Western Canyons. Her faintly luminous skin reflected the light in calm ripples. "Was that music?" she asked. He scratched the back of his neck. "Something like it." "You are improving the air quality," she said with dry humor. "That counts as progress." He almost smiled. Almost. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was familiar, companionable. And then the comms cracked to life. "Outpost 12, this is Port Meridian Command Patrol Delta 7. Identify and prepare for inspection." Ryan's head snapped up. "Inspection?" He strode to the console, hands flying over the keys. The screen flashed a signal trace official, Unity Council encryption. "They never come this far," he muttered. "Something's wrong." Arian's voice was low. "Do they know I am here?" He hesitated. "They shouldn't. I scrubbed your arrival logs." "But," he looked at her, then at the quiet steadiness in her eyes. "But the Council always finds what it wants to find." The patrol ship arrived 2 hours later, slicing through the sky like a silver blade. It landed in a blast of dust just outside the barrier dome. Ryan and Arian stood side by side at the outer gate as the hatch opened. From it emerged Colonel Dravan, uniform immaculate, expression sharp as alloy. His eyes flicked over Ryan, then stopped on Arian. "Well," Dravan said, voice oily with mock courtesy. "Commander Vale, I was told this outpost was inactive. I see that was inaccurate." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We're still operational. Barely." Dravan stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back. "Operational enough to harbor an unregistered Varan hybrid?" Arian didn't flinch. Her bioluminescence dimmed to a calm blue, the color of restraint. "I am not unregistered," she said. "I was dismissed under council order. No law forbids my existence." Dravan's lips curved faintly. "Existence, no. Cohabitation with a Terran officer, however, that raises questions." Ryan stepped forward. "You're on the wrong mission, Colonel." "Am I?" Dravan's gaze flicked toward the repaired reactor, the revived drones, the growing moss visible through the glass corridor. "Curious. A forgotten outpost suddenly regenerating. Systems restored using alien tech. Perhaps our Commander Vale has been busy." Ryan's voice was ice. "Everything you see, she fixed. You should be thanking her." "Or investigating her," Dravan countered. He gestured to his soldiers. "Search the premises." The patrol spread through the outpost like a contagion, opening panels, scanning walls, pulling data cores. Ryan followed them with clenched fists. Arian stayed still, hands folded, watching them quietly. There was a calmness to her that unnerved even the soldiers. She had learned long ago that silence disarms more effectively than words. When Dravan found the containment sphere on the table, he lifted it, eyes narrowing at the soft starlight swirling inside. "Alien artifact, potential signal device." Arian's voice cut clean through the room. "That sphere is part of my physiology's energy balance. You tamper with it, you kill me." Dravan turned the sphere in his hand, unfazed. "Is that a threat?" "It is a fact." Ryan's patience snapped. He stepped between them. "That's enough. You came here for an inspection, not a damn witch trial." Dravan's eyes hardened. "Watch yourself, Commander. You've gone native before." The air between them crackled. Then from the corridor, a young soldier shouted, Sir, encrypted transmissions in the auxiliary terminal. Unknown frequency. Ryan froze. He knew that console, the one in the lower bay Ariel, had been repairing. Dravan's smirk returned. Well now, what a coincidence. Arian turned sharply. Those are maintenance diagnostics. I rerouted the relay to... To what? Dravan interrupted. Communicate with your varying kin? Feed them coordinates? We've intercepted raids in this sector for months. Someone's been transmitting our patrol routes. Ryan's voice rose. That's insane. She's done nothing. Dravan lifted a hand. Enough. Until proven otherwise, the alien is under arrest for espionage against the Terran Unity Council. The soldiers moved instantly. Energy cuffs snapped around Darian's wrists, glowing white against her luminous skin. Rian lunged forward, but 3 rifles aimed at his chest froze him mid-step. Don't make me sight you too, Commander, Dravan warned. Ryan's voice was low, furious. You have no proof. Proof, Dravan said, dragging Ariel toward the exit, is whatever keeps the peace. When the patrol ship lifted off, its thrusters burned a hole in the morning sky. Ryan stood on the ridge long after it vanished, jaw locked, hands trembling with rage. The outpost felt hollow again, stripped of its warmth. Every repaired system hummed like a ghost. He found her containment sphere still on the table. Dravan hadn't taken it. The light inside pulsed faintly, weakly, like a dying heart. Ryan placed his palm against it. Hold on, he whispered. I'm coming. But the comm beacons were silent. The council had cut his signal access. He slammed a fist against the console, the sound echoing through the dome. Outside, lightning rippled on the horizon, green and wrong. Then faint through the static, the warning alarms began to scream. Incoming heat signatures. Multiple. Fast. He sprinted to the tower, eyes widening as he saw them through the clouds. Dark shapes descending cliff marauders. Alien warcraft tearing through the sky like vultures. They were heading straight for Port Meridian. Dravan, you fool, Rand muttered. You led them right to her. He activated the outpost's defenses, rusted turrets whirring to life, drones lifting off like broken birds. The first plasma strike hit the ground 2 kilometers east. The shockwaves sent sand and light in every direction. Then the radio crackled one voice, weak, full of static. Ryan, don't fight them. Please. Arian. Her voice barely a whisper through the interference. They'll destroy you too. I'm not worth... Shut up, he growled into the mic. You don't get to say that. Not after you fixed everything I'd already given up on. Ryan, I'm coming. He grabbed his plasma rifle, strapped on his armor, and stepped out into the storm. The battle hit before the horizon did. Clythe's ships swooped low, firing plasma bolts that turned sand to glass. Ryan moved through the inferno like a ghost shooting, dodging, bleeding. His drones fell one by one, but each time another stood up. His comm flickered again, Arian's voice fading in and out. They said you'd betray humanity for me. Guess I'll have to prove them wrong then. You can't win alone. Then I'll lose loud. The final blast struck the ridge behind him, throwing him into the dust. His armor cracked. He hit the ground hard, vision swimming. As he dragged himself to the console, smoke rising all around, he saw the reactor grid, flickering dangerously. He could overload it, use it as a beacon, but it might level the entire outpost. He smiled through the blood on his lip. If humanity's got one thing left, he whispered, it's stubbornness. He slammed his hand on the override. The reactor roared to life, light blazing through the desert like a second sun. Far above, one of the Clythe ships veered off course, hit by the pulse. Another followed. Then the rest scattered. Ryan collapsed beside the terminal, breath ragged, the containment sphere still clutched in his hand. The last thing he heard before the static swallowed everything was her voice again, soft, breaking, full of something that sounded like grief. I'm coming back. Then silence. When the dust settled, the outpost was half in ruins. Towers melted, sand turned to glass, sky burning red. Ryan lay beneath the shattered dome, armor scorched, body shaking. He stared up at the storm fading overhead and whispered to no one, "I told you. I'd wait." The containment sphere pulsed once in his hand, faint, but alive. And somewhere far beyond the dunes, under a broken sky, a captured alien girl looked toward the rising flame and began to run. Smoke choked the morning horizon. From the upper towers of Port Meridian, the world looked like it was bleeding black columns twisting upward from the desert where the Cleith Armada had breached the atmosphere. Alarms wailed through the city's iron canyons. Crowds flooded the plazas, running from shadows that screamed and burned. And inside the council's fortress dome, Arian Solara sat in her containment cell, her wrists still cuffed, her luminous veins dimming by the hour. She had watched the first explosions through the slit of her window. She had recognized the streaks of light, the sound of engines Cleith warcraft, unmistakable, the same kind that had destroyed her homeworld when she was a child. The soldiers had shouted, scrambled for orders, sealed the corridors. Then everything went quiet, the kind of quiet that only came when the world ran out of courage. Arian pressed her palms to the glass. Beyond it, the sky burned green. "Ryan," she whispered. She had seen the fire on the horizon, the one that tore across the desert hours earlier. She had felt the pulse through her neural link, the blast of energy that could only have come from Outpost 12's reactor. He had done it. He had survived. And now, because of her, he would die for it. She closed her eyes and breathed once. Steady. The faint lines of light beneath her skin brightened, pulsing faster. The human restraints on her wrist began to spark. A guard pounded on the glass. "What the hell are you doing?" Her voice was soft, almost kind. "Leaving." The light beneath her skin flared white. The cuffs melted like wax. The energy barrier flickered once, then shattered in a hiss of ozone and steam. She stepped through the smoke, her containment sphere hovering beside her, following her like a living heart. Alarms screamed as she moved down the corridor. The soldiers who tried to stop her saw only the blur of light and shadow, a shape too bright to aim at. Arian reached the hangar bay and stopped before a scout-class dropship, half broken but fueled. She placed her hands on the hull. Her bioluminescence flowed into the ship's core, reawakening it. The engines hummed like a beast returning from death. "Open the gates," she whispered. The hangar roof split apart. Wind and fire poured in. She looked once at the city, its towers collapsing beneath plasma fire, then at the horizon where Rian's beacon still flickered faintly in the sand. "Hold on," she murmured. "Just a little longer." Then the dropship roared into the sky. The flight across the charred plains was chaos sand and plasma, whipping through the air, lightning bleeding across the clouds. Ariane gripped the controls, her hands shaking. The containment sphere glowed at her side, reacting to her pulse. Every surge of emotion made the ship flare brighter, faster. As the coordinates of Outpost 12 appeared on her screen, she saw the devastation. The dome half collapsed, the desert glowing with heat. Her breath caught. He was there, alive but barely. She landed hard, skidding across glass sand. The ship's hatch opened into a storm of smoke and static. The heat was unbearable. "Ryan!" she shouted. No answer, only the crackling hiss of burning metal. She ran through the ruins, scanning for a life sign. The air shimmered with radiation. Her luminous veins flared in resistance, her body burning itself to stay alive. Then faintly, through the haze, a figure slumped against the reactor core, half buried under debris. "Ryan!" She tore through the rubble with both hands. The heat blistered her palms, but she didn't stop until she saw his face pale, blood-streaked, his armor cracked. His eyes flickered open. "Arian!" She caught his head in her hands, voice trembling. "You should have run." He coughed a laugh that hurt to hear. "And miss all this?" "Idiot," she whispered. He tried to sit. Failed. You came back. Of course I did. A weak smile touched his lips. You're supposed to be a spy. I'm terrible at it, she said. The ground trembled beneath them, another explosion closer this time. The reactor's energy core was destabilizing. They had minutes. Arian looked up at the control terminal, the circuits fried, the emergency stabilizer offline. If that core ruptures, the desert becomes a crater, Rian finished. Figures. She met his eyes. Can you move? Not far. Then stay. She rose, stepping to the console, pressing her glowing palms against the broken panel. Her energy flowed into the machine like a current of light. Sparks erupted, wires screamed, metal fused. What are you doing? Rian shouted. Buying us a sky. Arian. Don't argue. Just breathe. The lights around the reactor began to pulse faster, her heartbeat syncing with its rhythm. She could feel the storm overhead responding, its lightning converging toward the tower, drawn to her. Ryan crawled forward, blood running down his face. You can't contain that energy. It'll kill you. She turned her head slightly, enough for him to see her smile. Maybe, but at least I'll die doing something human. The containment sphere lifted from the ground and merged into her chest, the starlight pouring into her veins. Her whole body blazed not blue now, but white, like a sun. The storm split open. From orbit, the explosion looked like dawn, a ring of light spreading across the plains, swallowing the cliff ships in a single silent flare. When it faded, the desert lay still. The outpost was gone. The sky cleared. The invasion fleet was no more. And somewhere in the quiet crater that remained, Ryan Vale gasped for breath alive, the sand glowing faintly beneath his hands. He looked up at the horizon, tears cutting lines through the dust. You stubborn, impossible woman, he whispered. You saved us all. 2 days later, the rescue convoy from Port Meridian found him wandering the ruins. They said he shouldn't have been alive. He said nothing. He just handed them a small shard of crystal, all that was left of her containment sphere. Send this to the stars, he said. She belonged there. But when night came as the ships carried him back to the city, the shard pulsed once in his pocket. Faint, rhythmic, alive. He closed his eyes, whispering to the dark, I'll find you. And somewhere across the shattered orbit of Epsilon Verge, a faint voice echoed through the static of broken satellites. I'm not gone, Ryan. Not yet. He opened his eyes. The sky above was no longer burning, but alive with shifting light. And for the first time since the wars began, he believed the stars might actually be listening. Months passed since the day the desert became light. The storm season ended. The Clayth Armada was gone. The people of Epsilon Verge rebuilt their cities from blackened glass and wreckage. But for Commander Rian Vale, the silence after victory felt heavier than the war itself. He had been found alive among ruins that should have killed him. His lungs still bore radiation scars. His left arm trembled from the neural burns of the reactor blast. But none of that mattered, because she was gone. The outpost gone, her light gone, her laughter a ghost in the metal wind. He lived in a temporary shelter at the edge of Port Meridian's reconstruction zone. At dawn, he walked to the ridge overlooking the crater that had once been Outpost 12. At dusk, he came back covered in dust, silent, eyes fixed somewhere beyond what any scope could see. The medics called it survivor's trance. The soldiers whispered, he still listens for her. They were right. One evening, the sky shifted strange again. Not storm, not smoke, but soft, pulsing light over the horizon. Ryan squinted, rising from the ridge's edge. The glow wasn't fire. It was rhythm pattern, deliberate. A beacon. His heart hammered once, then again. He ran. Across dunes that still steamed from radiation. Past twisted towers and scorched cables half buried in glass. His lungs burned, But he didn't stop until he reached the crater's rim. There, nestled in the hollow center, he saw it, a spire of light, delicate, crystalline, growing from the sand like a seed that had taken root. And within it, movement. He descended carefully, each step crunching against glass. As he approached, the light flared, not blinding, but soft, alive. Then he heard her voice. "You kept your promise." He froze. "Arian?" The spire flickered, and a figure emerged, translucent at first, then solid, shaped from refracted light and memory. Her face, her eyes, her glow. Her body no longer fully physical, more energy than flesh, more song than sound. But she smiled like she had before, quiet, steady, human. "You came back," he breathed. She tilted her head, slightly teasing. "You make it sound like I went far." He stepped closer, eyes wide. How is this possible?" "The reactor didn't destroy me," she said softly. "It changed me. The containment sphere merged with my neural field. I became part of the planetary grid, every circuit, every current, every signal that still hums in the soil." Ryan stared, the words hitting like slow thunder. "You're the network." "I am what's left of it," she said, "and what it could become." He reached out instinctively, then hesitated, afraid his hand would pass through. But when his fingers brushed her arm, the light shimmered, and warmth met skin. "Real. You're here," he whispered. "For now," she said, "but the energy keeping me stable is fading. This form is temporary. My body burned long ago." He shook his head. "Then we'll fix it." "There has to be a way." "There is," she said quietly. "But it means staying like this, connected to the core. I can't leave it. If I disconnect, the new systems we built, the repaired cities, the life support grids, all of it collapses. Epsilon Verge will die again." He stared at her, at the light, at the flicker of pulse beneath the glow. "So the world lives because you're still holding it together." A faint smile. "I was made to bring peace, remember? I finally did." Ryan's throat tightened. "You're not a machine, Arian. You're not a system." "I'm both," she said, "and neither." He looked around at the faint flickering dunes, the rebuilt horizon. "You saved everyone, and they'll never even know your name." She reached forward, touching his chest, light flowing faintly beneath her hand. "You know it. That's enough." They stood there in the crater, two shapes, one of light, one of blood, in the heart of a world that had almost ended. The wind carried a low hum, like the planet breathing again. Ryan finally spoke, voice rough. "If you stay here, if you fade," she interrupted gently, "then I fade as purpose, not loss. Don't you see? This is what we were fighting for. A world that remembers compassion before conquest." He took her hand again, holding it tight, the glow seeping into his skin. "I'm not letting you vanish into myth." Her expression softened. "You can't stop entropy, Ryan." "Maybe not," he said, "but I can choose what I believe in." "What's that?" He smiled faintly. "That even light remembers love." The air shimmered between them, faint ripples of distortion spreading outward. Her form flickered. "Your pulse is stabilizing," she murmured. "The radiation scar is healing." "You're still taking care of me," he said. "I told you once," she whispered, voice breaking. "My kind fades into the void. You fight it. That's why I followed you. That's why I still do." Ryan's chest tightened. "You don't have to fade alone." She smiled, soft, luminous, infinite. "I'm not alone. I have the world now, and I have you somewhere inside it." The light around her began to spread slow, like dawn. It filled the crater, painting the sand in shades of gold and silver. Her outline blurred. "Arian," he said, stepping forward. She looked up at him one last time, her voice barely more than a whisper carried on static and wind. "Live, that's how you keep me." Then the light broke apart, scattering upward, joining the stars. That night across Epsilon Verge, the sky changed. Not from storms, not from war, but from color. The stars above pulsed in gentle waves, forming a new pattern in the heavens, a luminous arc stretching from horizon to horizon. The colonists called it the Veil of Solara. They said it was the first time the planet truly felt alive. Ryan never corrected them. Years later, the frontier thrived again. Outpost 12 was rebuilt as a living station, half human metal, half alien crystal. Children grew crops under the glowing moss Arian had brought to life. The city's energy grid was self-sustaining, powered by what the scientists called the Solara core. And every dawn, when the first light touched the horizon, the reactors across Epsilon Verge hummed in unison like a heartbeat. Ryan stood on the same ridge each morning, hair streaked with silver now, his hand resting on a small transmitter embedded in his wrist. He pressed it once. "Morning, Arian." The reply came not in words, but light as shimmer across the sky, like laughter translated into color. He smiled. "Yeah, I miss you too." The wind swept through the canyon, carrying the scent of new rain, something this world had never known before she changed it. And beneath that sky, two legacies endured. One of steel and survival, the other of light and love. Both human, both chosen. Humanity's greatest victory was never the war we won, but the heart we refused to lose. She was alien, I was broken yet together. We built a world that learned how to feel again. So when you look up at the stars and see them breathing, remember some lights never fade, they just choose to stay. The end.